Jake Adams, and I don't know about you, but I'm frustrated reading news on the internet. I spend most of my time reading through things that I don't care about. Let me show you. We'll take a look here. This is a typical day. I'm constantly scrolling and scanning through sites and categories, trying to find something that I want to read. And here I run across an article on life expectancy. And you would think at some point in this article, I would get some relevant recommendations on where to go to next. Let's take a look. So we've got the $5 bill is going to collapse the economy, credit cards, and the Kardashians. Now, these are bad recommendations. And this is why we decided to come together to figure out why this is happening. These bad recommendations fall into three categories. The first one is editorial aggregation. And this is where you pay someone to select content for everyone, much like the homepage on a news site. The problem is they're trying to be something for everyone. Next, we have collaborative filtering. This is selecting the popular content. And the Kardashians are quite popular, but that's not an interest of mine. Finally, we have content relevancy. This is about related content. So if I was to read that article on life expectancy, I might get a recommendation on a new hospital because they're both in healthcare. After we defined these categories, we took a step back and we said, we can do better. And that's why we built Filterly. Filterly is focused on your interests and not what's popular. We built a platform that learns what concepts, ideas, and themes you interact with in order to provide the best personalized experience. Let's take a look at how we can make these recommendations better. Let's go ahead and switch over to the demo. And what you'll see here on your screen is on the right-hand side is going to be our powered version of our engine using Donald Trump's interests. And on the left-hand side is just the real New York Times. And you can see Donald's recommendations are powered off of his interests. And we know that Donald is quite fond of himself, and he also is interested in the presidential race. Let's go ahead and contrast this with Bill Gates. Now, Bill Gates is more interested in philanthropy and healthcare. So you can see his are completely unique. This is a great example of how Filterly can power personalized recommendations in real time for the New York Times. Let's go ahead and switch back to the slide deck. Here's a sample of information from Donald's relevance graph that powered the Donald Times experience. These are some of the most influential and important concepts that drove those recommendations that you saw. Let's take a look at how all this works. The first step is we learn how the user interacts with the article, whether they read it, how much time they spend on it, if they share it. And then we combine that with social activity and behavioral metrics. Next, we take all that activity and we analyze it. We create a relevance graph. And we use natural language processing, machine learning, and custom algorithms. And then finally, we're going to deliver these recommendations to our partners. And then we allow them to call these recommendations via an API or integrating with our widgets. The best part is your recommendations continuously adapt to your activity. Personalization is critical to the future of digital content. Most publishers lack the tools, and that's where Filterly comes in. That's where we can make our biggest impact. We can increase user retention, engagement, and satisfaction. We've shown you how powerful Filterly is for the news, but that's just the beginning. Our vision includes retailers, marketing, and much more. Now, you can check out our technology preview at filter.ly. But isn't it time we make the internet a better, more personal place? Thank you.
All right. Hopefully. Judges.
Something you didn't mention was kind of how you're going to make money. When I think about media companies, you use New York Times as an example. That's not necessarily an example that VCs would be excited about. So how are you going to create, value and make a profit off of industry that has been really challenged to make money?
So, best.
I was going to defer to Adrian.
Keep going.
So there's two things that we care about deeply. I think the first thing is that in terms of ads and how people have been making money traditionally, that's now become a problematic space. So you see the prevalence of ad blocking software is fundamentally changing how publishers are going to have to interact with their customers. So if you look at the New York Times, one of the examples we use, one of the things that they're definitely involved with is ensuring that their subscribers are getting the best possible experience. And so that's an area where personalization can really increase perceived value over time for a subscriber base that's willing to come back and monetize content. And that also helps expand the brand, right? Because if you look at all the aggregators that people are using today to come back and look into content, those are kind of one single interaction to look at the content, to come back out and go to lose focus, to go somewhere else. What we would like to do is ensure that once you have somebody captured in an experience, that you're going to present the best possible content that you've already invested in, right? So if you're the New York Times, you already have a plethora of content that you've invested in. We want to ensure that you can present that content to the right customers when they come to your site. And secondly, the retail experience is also interesting because Amazon, 1/3 of their sales are driven off of the recommendations. So personalizing an experience instead of using collaborative filtering, like people who've bought this have also purchased this other thing, that's fine. That's a start, but we think that personalizing based off of interests, interactions, and history has a lot of opportunity in that space as well. And so our model is really based around maintaining that personalization experience and presenting those recommendations to the partners so they can aggregate and present that to inside of their experiences.
So this is probably, at a top level, the idea of helping people find the content that they're most interested in is probably the idea that I've seen more than any other in the decade or so that I've been doing this. And I've seen very few of these companies, maybe none of them, achieve scale, except for the really evil ones that put, like the Kardashians at the bottom of the page. And the reason those tend to win, it seems to me, is because apparently people really want to read about the Kardashians, and those companies are the ones that actually generate the most revenue for the publishers that are putting that crap down at the bottom of their pages. I mean, why have none of these other companies succeeded, and why do you, and why do you succeed when literally the road is buried with bodies here?
So as I mentioned already, one of the trends that we see happening is that these general recommendations that people are making that are more based on popularity, right? What's interesting now is like if you go to a news website, now you're getting content presented to you that has nothing to do with what you're actually looking at or based off of what you're interested in. It's based off of largely popularity, and what the people presenting that content care about is click-through rates. And those clicks go to a different website. They share the revenue, but it's really just an advertisement. They're not really presenting real content. Right? And so that's where we think we're coming at this from a completely...
I understand how it works. I'm just saying that they make more revenue there than they do by trying to keep people on their site and getting them. I mean, it's just so. I'm trying to understand what your secret sauce is. I mean, I understand the high level. This is not a new story.
Okay. So two things. As more people consume content on mobile experience, the opportunity for ads is lower. Mm-hmm. And the second is, most recently, ad blockers have been introduced and allowed into iOS 9. So that's going to put additional pressure on generalized advertisements that come from external providers from the content portal that you're looking at. So because of those two pressures, we think that content publishers are going to look for a new way of presenting a better experience to their customers.
Are you building...
Whoops. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Are you building up profiles that follow your users around the web?
So we can look at a variety of signals depending on which partner that we're integrating with. So what we looked at for like Bill Gates and for Donald Trump, we largely just generated based off their public persona, their profiles on, for example, Twitter. So we can go in and ingest and look at all the content that they're interested with. And to touch back on a little bit on the scale question that came up a little earlier, we automatically generate and ingest all that content and build that profile with no manual intervention whatsoever. And we do so within a matter of seconds based off of the custom algorithms that we're using. And so that's how we think we can achieve the scale that's needed to build this personalization experience and provide recommendations real time when people are visiting sites.
So I've got two questions. One is very few people any longer go directly to a news site or even a content site. They find content on Twitter, they find it on their Facebook feed. That's how they get to whatever news site they may be reading on, and they don't usually stay there. So is this one generation too late?
So we believe that, yes, that's true. A lot of people are coming through some other portal to get to that content. But once they're there, we want to ensure that what they're presented allows for some degree of capture and redirection to another asset or property that publisher cares about. And that's where we think our key value proposition is. So, for example, if you're the New York Times and you're trying to establish your brand, constantly publishing articles into Apple News feeds and Google News feeds and everywhere else really destabilizes the value proposition of your brand. Like, why wouldn't the writers just submit the content directly? Right? So we believe that the people that are spending the money to build the content are going to be interested in retaining that brand.
So we're out of time. Very quickly, if you want to ask the question, 2-sentence answer. Oh, no more questions?
No, go ahead.
Okay, cool. All right. Filterly, thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.